Welcome to the S.J. Child Show, where a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. Enjoy the show. Hi, and welcome to the S.J. Child Show. Today, I am speaking with Betsy Hill, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation because, as a lot of you know, that I really, number one, I'm so passionate about children and children's education and how we can better foster and nurture relationships, connections, communication, and really teach our kids how to be resilient moving into the future so that we can create a better, kinder, more inclusive environment for everyone. And today we have a really great guest, and we're going to have a fantastic conversation. So thank you so much for being here today, Betsy.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Great to be here.
So good to meet you. And I'm really interested to, find out more about you. So give us an introduction about kind of who you are and where it started.
Okay. Well, probably the most important thing about me is that I raised three boys, all of whom were very different and all of whom had some challenges in different ways, but they are amazing human beings. I started off as a school teacher back, when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. And, but I defected, as many teachers do. The education system and what we know about teaching. I mean, I taught foreign language, and there were some of my students that just, like your son, who's a real language learner, was really easy for them. And for others, they just struggled and just couldn't do it. And I didn't have things in my repertoire, in my toolkit that I knew how to help them. If I knew half of what I know today, back then, it would have been a very different experience. But I stayed connected, and I've always been interested in the brain and how it works. I was interested in brain and how we manage language. And 15 years or so ago, I had the great good fortune to meet Pat Wolff and Dr. Patricia Wolff, who is one of the pioneers in applying neuroscience in education. And she wrote a book called Brain Matters, which is my number one recommendation for any teacher who wants to understand how the brain learns. It's a fabulous book. And so I've done a lot of work with her and a group that has been trained by her called the Brainy Bunch.
I love
that. And it's been an incredible experience. And through that and a number of other experiences, I just have been fascinated and in learning about how the brain and now being able to share that with others, like being able to do this on your show today, which I'm delighted to do.
It's so amazing when we can help, especially teachers. I think it's so important. And I mean, of course, every teacher comes from a different background and is taking their own perspective with them. And it's so, there's so much compassion that has to go into wanting to be a teacher, being a teacher. And I think that, being able to help or support them in understanding some of the different learning types that, thank goodness, at the place we're at in this era of our time right now, we're understanding, we're learning, we're being more cognizant of people's differences, of their different learning styles, and how we can accommodate them through better support systems and resources. And it really takes a dedicated teacher to stand up, to want to understand, number one, and then put that into action and really develop, a good neuroaffirming learning environment for their students.
Yeah, I love that expression. I hadn't heard neuroaffirming, but I really think that's a very apt expression. And what I find is most teachers are really interested. They just have not been exposed to it. Most teacher training programs still today never mention the word brain. It's as if learning happens in your little toe or your left elbow or something, because we don't really understand that. And so one of the ways that I start a lot of my training sessions is to ask people, how would you define learning?
Mm.
And I typically get an answer that's something like, well, it's acquiring new knowledge and skills. It's being able to apply that knowledge. It's being able to do something you couldn't do before. And all of that is true. But at its very fundamental level, learning is a biological process.
Can I answer? Right? I would ask me. Yeah, that's exactly what I would say. It's a process.
It's about the making and strengthening of connections among neurons in neural networks in our brains. So we have 85 billion neurons in our brains, give or take, from the time we're born. And we get a few more and we lose a few, but pretty much we have that bunch of neurons. And so what happens as we grow, it's not more neurons in our brains, it's those connections. And we end up with trillions and trillions and trillions of connections, which are the basis. All those neurons communicating together are the basis of all human behavior. And so when we start to understand that, then we have to ask questions like, what do we do to help students' brains make new connections? Because we're not transmitting knowledge. We're helping brains build themselves. And when we do that, then we have to ask different questions. It's not about, do I know my stuff and can I tell you about it? It's how do I create a learning experience for you that will allow your brain to build the right connections that have meaning and that make sense, then that you can then go forward and use and retrieve.
Yeah. And now we can put some, practical application to those things and say one student might learn better through watching a video. One student might learn better through hands-on experience, through visual experience, like writing down and seeing it, or being spoken to. So it's so important that we realize that not everyone is going to learn from one learning experience or one teaching process, that we have to really individualize. And I don't even know how that's possible. I've been a preschool teacher and I know how to wrangle kittens around, but I've never had to deal with
special talent,
right?
It's a special talent. Yeah.
Never.
So what the wonderful thing, and this really didn't exist, certainly, it's really within the last probably 10 years, is the ability in a very affordable and pretty quick way to actually understand how individual students learn. And so there's this, when we refer to these, you mentioned the word process. So there are a whole bunch of processes that are happening in our brains through these neural pathways and connections. And those processes are also referred to as cognitive skills. So you may have heard that term. Cognitive skills include various types of attention. So there actually is more than one type of attention. There's sustained attention. There's selective attention. When we're able to screen things out, there's divided attention, how quickly you go back and forth, keeping a couple of things active in your mind. And then we have other skills like various types of memory skills, very short-term memory, longer-term memory, visual processing, auditory processing. All of these are really the how of learning. So in school, a lot of time it's about the what of learning. What do I need to learn to read? I need to learn to do multiplication, division, subtraction, and addition. I need to know about it's the what that gets so much focus rather than the how. And today we can actually give a 1-hour cognitive assessment that's online. It's very easy to do and learn a tremendous amount about how an individual child learns. So you were talking about a child who maybe learns from seeing versus learns from reading and hearing. So that's a very classic. The assessment that we use will define and characterize how both verbal memory and visual memory. And these are more long-term types of memory, but is it easier for your brain to remember information that you see, So a chart, a graph, a diagram, a picture, an image, whatever? Or is it easier for you to remember something that's language based, what you see and hear? So my strength is my verbal memory versus my visual memory. So if I needed to remember what your set looked like, I would have to put it into words. And I would say there's a little framed picture up at the top right, although it may be left the way that wait, Zoom switches things around. This says just be awesome. Now that I've said that, if somebody asked me tomorrow what was in Sarah's set, I would be able to remember that, but I wouldn't be probably otherwise. So now think about an assignment that we would typically get in school to learn new vocabulary words. And very often the teacher will say, write the word, write the definition of the word, write the word in a sentence. Did you ever have an assignment like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Most of us did. Now think about those two kids, one who's got great verbal memory. That's a wonderful assignment for me. Now think about the child who remembers everything that they see, but really struggles to remember verbal information.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a torturous assignment for them. Yeah. They're going to spend a lot of time. They're going to struggle. It's going to be difficult. And at the end of the day, it's not going to stick. Mm. And so it's a very simple example, but I think a really powerful one that says when we can, and it's not about preferences. We all learn verbally and visually. It's not like I don't take in visual information or remember it.
Yeah.
But it's my strength. And when we help kids understand their learning strengths, I call them learning superpowers when I'm talking to kids about their cognitive profiles. Then we can help them use those. We can help them make learning much more easy, much more effective. And they get to spend more time doing stuff they really like to do.
Oh, I absolutely agree. We have a child with dyslexia, and math is really hard. Reading obviously is difficult, but math was unexpectedly more difficult than we thought. And one thing that they really did like to do was play Minecraft. And we engaged with them to build multiplication tables or blocks within Minecraft. Figure out, like, add the blocks, count the blocks, multiply the blocks, do your own in your own world while you're having fun, while you're taking in all that information. And I think it was just so great to be able to, like you said, build up the strengths with the challenges, build the challenges with the strengths, rather. It's so empowering for kids when they have that aha moment that okay, I can do this, and not feeling so deflated or like a failure or defeated from not being able to learn like their peers.
Yes. And a lot of school tends to focus on what kids can't do. So what did you get wrong on the test? We got to fill that in. What don't you do well? We got to figure out how to, help you work around that or whatever. And what we now are knowing, and what neuroscience is really going to, the way it's really going to impact education is by helping children understand how they learn, but also that these skills are not fixed. They're not, you don't just get, a box full of blocks that you come into the world with that are your cognitive skills, and that's all you ever have. These skills can actually be strengthened, and we know that they can be developed through the right kind of cognitive training by building those skills so that they're there. And everything from attention to processing speed to working memory to other executive functions. And these are the reasons that many kids struggle. When kids struggle with reading and math, most of the time it is not an issue of instruction or curriculum. Sometimes we're using some of the wrong tools that they need to building math facts into Minecraft did for you guys. But most of the time it's because there is some underlying cognitive weakness, and that if we can help them improve that. So one great example, I think, is working memory. And working memory is getting a lot of attention these days. A lot of parents are actually familiar with the term and they've been told your child has issues with working memory. Um, and so but a lot of parents don't know what that is either. It's not sort of common. And we all use the word attention, although we may not use it the way that the neuroscientists use it, but we have a pretty good intuitive idea of what attention is, and we can tell whether a kid's paying attention or not sometimes. Sometimes they're paying a lot more attention than we think they are.
Yeah.
But working memory is one of those. It's called an executive function, and there are three: working memory, inhibitory control, how you stop yourself from doing something you otherwise would do, and cognitive flexibility, so how you are able to adapt to the world around you. And these are all very predictive of academic success, life success, all those kinds of things. And there are a lot of kids who struggle with one or more executive functions, as you know.
Yes.
So working memory, just to use this as an example, because part of what we're trying to do is help parents understand, some of these terms and relationships that they may not appreciate, is how we hold information in our minds while we think about it. So when you tell your child, would you please go upstairs and get your soccer uniform and make sure you brush your teeth while you're up there, and then grab your spelling list because we'll practice it in the car on the way to soccer practice. Well, a lot of kids listen to those instructions and they may get the first one done. They may get upstairs and they may find part of their soccer uniform, and then they may just look at you like, what did you say? And it's not because they weren't trying to listen. It's not that they weren't paying attention. It's that their brains just don't hold on to all that information. Working memory has limited capacity for all of us, but even more so for some. And that's when then we misinterpret that. And we call kids lazy. We call them inattentive.
Yeah.
We call them difficult. We call them not paying, not listening. We do a lot of things. And most of the time, it's that their brains simply aren't holding on to that. And then you would think about, okay, so that's an example we can appreciate as parents, that it's a behavior. But it also underlies some very important aspects of math and reading. So think about what's happening when you're reading. You're taking in pieces of information. You're holding them in your mind while you think about them. You're comparing them to what you already know, which is how we create meaning. It's how comprehension works. And that all happens in working memory. It's our only conscious processing. And so when kids get to that stage where they can decode and they can read out loud, and they read something to you, and then you ask them a question, they have no idea what they read, that can very often be something that's related to working memory. And the exciting thing is that we can actually build these skills up. We can improve working memory and attention and inhibitory control and all those things to help kids be more successful.
Yeah. And so important too, because I can see the differences even in my own two children, just night and day with the DJs. We actually had his tested. He has a 99% working memory in his processing speed in equating and, a certain limited number of things. But then, like you said, that impulsatory reactions and things. Oh, I hope that someday we get a handle on those types of things in practice. But those are something we have to practice all the time. Going to the store, and he's 13, so scanning the groceries and putting them in the bag. That's something we're doing regularly now, so that he can start building those skills, because I need him to go grocery shopping someday for himself if he has to, and I want him to know how. But I kind of joked with you at the beginning, like he studies all these languages, but he's still semi-communicative with his ability to have a conversation and to really communicate with people. And that's hard for people to understand, that he could have this extreme bit of knowledge, yet I'm looking at him and I'm trying to talk to him, but he just repeated back to me, or that good echolalia, or he, said something completely different that had nothing to do with it. And so, and I mean, obviously with him, there's a whole different like bubble, but with other children and the ability to be able to um, feel like they are being seen and heard and valued in their class, it's so important that we take the time to, as parents, try to help the teacher understand who our children are. And I really want to put a lot of emphasis on parents, because it really starts in the home, and it starts with looking at your child and understanding very early on how they're taking in and learning information and things that they're struggling with. That's